I'm Cassandra Hearn, a top divorce litigator in California. I have a passion for educating you through your own divorce process. I've taken the toughest of divorce cases to trial, including everything from divorces worth millions of dollars to serious child abuse cases to cases where spouses have turned to wage war against each other. Over the past 15 years of litigation experience, I have seen all of the highs and lows that come with making your way through a divorce. I created this podcast to help you gain insight and get into the right mindset so you can do a divorce by yourself, and to help you make all the right decisions along the way. Whether you're just thinking about divorce or are right in the middle of one, if you're looking for information, tools, inspiration, and a community to help you through it, you're in the right place. Welcome to the podcast, where I will be sharing with you all of my divorce secrets. All right, so today we're going to talk about whether there are or are not any good reasons to divorce. And just as a reminder, all of the topics that I talk about are really geared towards people who are contemplating or are going through a divorce in the state of California. So let's talk about whether or not there's actually a good reason to divorce. And in the state of California, there are actually a few good reasons a person may wish to divorce. And this isn't a battle between good and bad. This is just a question about whether or not you have grounds for divorce. And by grounds, I mean, do you have to prove a reason in order to get a divorce? Well, in the state of California, you actually do not. There is no reason that you must state in order to qualify for a divorce. Now, that is how all logic flows. So, for example, you don't have to prove in California that you were cheated on in order to get a divorce. If you begin your divorce, you will find, however, that on your petition, which is your initial request for a divorce, there are grounds or reasons that you state in order to divorce. The most common filing type in California is irreconcilable differences. And even though California says it is a no-fault state, that means nobody is at fault for the reason why your marital relationship may be ending. But that doesn't mean that the court will turn a blind eye to everything that happened in your marriage. So what are the quote good reasons? Okay, let's go to the two really good reasons that the court gives spouses for, hey, you know what? I said it was no fault. Nobody's at fault here, but these are the types of things I will heavily consider in your divorce. The first reason is a breach of fiduciary duty. And that can mean a lot of things in different cases. However, the basic elements when someone breaches their fiduciary duty is that the spouse who's done the breach has effectively damaged, harmed, or otherwise caused malaise to the community. Well, what's the community? The community in any marriage is the entity, and it's a virtual one, the virtual entity that's created when you say I do. Right? So you kind of create like a team. It's used as a word community, and that means everything that's created or lost between the two spouses for the duration of the marriage. All right, so how does breach of a fiduciary duty create a good reason for a divorce? Well, in a marriage, each spouse, both spouses, have a fiduciary duty to each other to uplift, to grow, to become, fantastic in every way by contributing to the community. So what does that mean, right? So does that just mean to grow the community, you put your money into it and you feed it with that? Yes, it does. Does that mean you make great investments over time, including things like retirement accounts and or stock purchases, purchases of businesses or creation of businesses, and so forth. Yes, it basically means all of the good things that people can do to begin, to seed, and to grow their wealth during the marriage. Those are all positive things a spouse can do to contribute to the creation and growth of the community. And a breach of a fiduciary duty in regards to those types of examples could be something like the squandering of an asset. So let's say, for example, one spouse secretly takes out their entire retirement that they built during the relationship and decides to go to Vegas and put it all on blacks, right? Or I don't know, I'm not a gambler, so put it into the slot machine if you want on one really long, crazy weekend. Okay, so that could very, very easily be shown as a breach of a fiduciary duty and a good reason why that might cause the community or the marriage to end. So that's one example, but not everything's about money. So fiduciary duties are existing between spouses on so many other levels. And if you're sitting there scratching your head wondering, I don't know, my spouse is doing some kind of shady things, it seems. The money keeps disappearing. Where is it going? You might be on to something. Here's another example of a breach of a fiduciary duty that will sometimes come up at the end of a relationship or even during the relationship, where one spouse decides that they're really not into the emotional part of the relationship and they want to take a lover, a long-term lover, a lover who starts receiving gifts, a lover who starts receiving things like an apartment or a condo or property or a boat or diamonds and jewels and gems, very expensive things that this spouse is then siphoning off from the community. And guess what? Breaching their fiduciary duty to the community to make the community profitable and to share the wealth in the community, even if that wealth is really small. It all counts. So a breach of a fiduciary duty is a really good reason for a divorce in California. But let's just talk about some other topics too. So in California, this state is extremely anti-violence, right? Domestic violence is not approved or appreciated anywhere throughout this state. When you file for a divorce, if you decide to go that route, there isn't a checkbox on the petition that we just talked about that says domestic violence as your grounds or your reason for a divorce. And in fact, just to be clear, there isn't a grounds either for breach of fiduciary duty. The grounds on the court form are really all of that falls under irreconcilable differences. And again, that's California trying to signal to you as the person who is filing that this is a no-fault state, meaning neither one of you are at fault, just about as bad as it could possibly get between the two of you. The court's going to pretend it doesn't care, unless it comes to some of these other topics that we're talking about, where these will be issues in your case, issues worth exploring and dealing with. Now, what about everything else, right? So domestic violence and breach of fiduciary duty are really just no questions asked, good reasons. If you need to give yourself a good reason, some people call this permission, to decide to move forward with leaving your relationship or starting a new chapter in your life without your spouse, what are the types of other things that divorce lawyers tend to see in this arena? Well, I could go on and on for days with war stories about cheating. And let's be honest, it's everywhere, all over the news. Whenever a celebrity has something happen, it's in pop culture, it's in the media, and it's even in songs, right? She caught me on camera. It wasn't me. Let's go, Shaggy, right? So, okay, it's not funny when you're cheated on, of course. It's devastating. But if you speak with a divorce lawyer and you feel that you've got to go in there and talk about how awful and terrible it was that your spouse has been caught cheating on you, or that you simply suspect your spouse of cheating, know this, just like almost everything else in California, the court's going to say, I don't care. I mean, sorry for you, but I don't care. You don't have to prove that here. And it's frankly not relevant to almost everything in your case. So it becomes relevant if we have the examples I mentioned earlier about cheating spouse having an apartment, a condo, big ticket items like that for a breach of duty. But okay, so they went to a hotel once, or, he or she kept sneaking off after work. That kind of stuff is hurtful, of course, devastating even. Those are the kinds of things you're going to want to spend time telling your friends about or telling your therapist about. Working with a divorce lawyer or talking to a judge about the cheating won't be relevant unless if it's that breach of fiduciary duty. Or one other thing, it won't necessarily be relevant unless the cheating actually caused danger or put the children in harm's way in your marriage. So that's something you'd have to think about to determine if your spouse's cheating actions rose to that level at all. But cheating is certainly 100% enough of a personal reason for you if you're looking for what's my reason? Why am I wanting this? What is it? Why is my heart crying? Is this the reason why I want to get divorced? And yes, you're fully justified in doing that. No person is required to remain in a relationship where the other spouse is disloyal. Most people, when they say their vows to each other, are making promises to remain loyal and faithful at all times. And if a breach of a promise like that to you is enough to break your heart or to just break your confidence and you're ready to move on, then that is a good reason for you to go. Now, to be clear, I'm not telling anyone to just up and leave their relationship. What I'm telling you is that this is ultimately a very personal and very intimate decision that only you can make. Well, what about some other things? It's not just cheaters out there. There are other good reasons that individuals may seek a divorce lawyer or may seek a divorce as a whole. Discontent, right? What about just happiness? If you find yourself day in and day out unable to be happy with this person in your life, certainly that is a valid reason, a personal reason, just like the other reasons we've discussed, for you to make that decision. What about your inability to see a future with the person you're with? If you can't see, possibly imagine, or think of yourself 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, a decade, 2, 3 from now, with this person by your side, that may be a good reason for you personally to decide that it's over. Another big reason that people seek divorce is actually the parenting paradox, right? So maybe you can't agree whether you do or don't want to have children, but maybe you already have children and you cannot co-parent, right? That's tough. Imagine yourself, or maybe you are in the situation where you've now created a new human or several, and you cannot have consistency or the ability to work together on the biggest project of your life, which isn't your job, it isn't buying a home, it's raising your children. If you cannot co-parent while you're in a relationship, can you imagine how to co-parent outside of the relationship? So there are tools, of course, that the court has for parents who are unable or incapable of co-parenting together. Those tools include everything from custody orders to orders about how you should talk to each other, and so on and so forth. But is your inability to co-parent, or even you may have heard the phrase parallel parenting, if that is something that is just making your home life the most awful thing you can imagine, guess what? It's probably also making home life the most awful thing your children can imagine. So yeah, when people ask me, is it a good enough reason to file for divorce if we just can't parent? Then yes, absolutely. It's a personal choice, and it's a choice that shouldn't be taken lightly. Of course, none of these should be taken lightly at all. Lastly, I want to talk about something that is maybe a bit taboo, and it's just taboo because no one really is comfortable talking about it, but I've been in this field too long. I'm just going to say it. Yes, you are justified in having a good reason for a divorce if you have a sexless marriage. Some couples have a sexless marriage and are completely unhappy about it. Some couples actually decide that that's the way to be and they prefer that. That's okay. That doesn't mean you have to run out and get a divorce. But think of this. If we are all humans here, right? I think no robots among us. If we are going to be humans in our human role, we must address our human desires and our human needs. If you are in a relationship that is sexless and you want sex in your life, your mating partner that you have married is not fulfilling one of your most fundamental needs. In fact, when we talk about some of the other reasons, other grounds for divorce on a petition for divorce, something sneaky is hiding in that form, and that's about a possible grounds if a marriage has never been consummated and whether that marriage is null, void, or a nullity. So think about that, right? We're not going into a big discussion about that right now, but we will later for sure. But just think about this for a minute. If the court even agrees that one of the basic fundamental reasons for marrying is to have sex and procreate, or to just procreate, then what are you doing in a sexless marriage? So it's not just about producing offspring all of the time, but it's a human need. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you've tried everything and you just can't get sex from your marriage, and you wanted to ask me, is that a good reason for a divorce? The answer is a resounding yes, actually. These are some examples that people have come to me with over the years asking about, do I have a good reason for divorce? In California, it's faultless. It's a no-fault state, so you don't have to blame the other person for anything. To be clear, nothing about this podcast or this episode is trying to get you to divorce or encourage you to divorce. In fact, if you can identify the problem, the thing that's got you wondering in the back of your mind, if you should divorce, the identification of the actual problem or the root of the problem that you have may be what saves the relationship. You may be able to save your marriage once you identify what the problem is and communicate about it. Communicate, but then also work together towards a resolution. I would recommend to anyone who is contemplating, do I have a good reason for a divorce? If you can identify the problem and try to work on it and save the marriage, then do so. You should, right? You promised that you would, or that you would try when you said I do. But if that's not going to happen, and maybe there's more than one reason, maybe there are 150, or maybe you're just ready and you decide it's time to move on and start a whole new chapter, then of course, I welcome you to utilize the resources that are available to you and do it when you're ready, when you've gathered enough information to educate yourself about the process, and then begin the process. Tune in next week for more secrets of the divorce trade.